Welcome to Loving Me Before I Love You with Tammy Nicole, the podcast dedicated to you loving and putting yourself first. Others have come first in your life for years, and you know it's time for that to change. You're about to be empowered to set healthy boundaries, confidently have hard conversations, unapologetically put yourself first, and live the peaceful life you deserve. Remember, self-love is essential, and loving yourself sets the stage for every other love in your life. So get ready to embrace self-love like never before with your host, Coach Tammy Nicole.
Hey. Welcome back to Loving Me Before I Love You on this Transformation Tuesday. I could not let the month of Father's Day, or should I say the month of June, go away as we're celebrating fathers all month, go without having an actual dad on the episode. So this episode, we have a father, and we are going to talk to him about what it's like to be a dad, what his journey to fatherhood look like, and what does he value most about being a dad. I have none other than Mr. Tron Brothers joining me today, and he is going to be very elaborate just because that's who he is. He's a very detailed individual. And so I'm super excited about this conversation because I know him to be a great father and I know him to enjoy fatherhood. So, Tron, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Miss Tammy. Thank you so much.
How are you?
I'm doing okay. I can't complain. It's the month of June. Just celebrated a birthday, so I'm feeling good.
Awesome. Yes, happy belated. So, tell the people a little bit about yourself before we dive into your journey of fatherhood.
Well, that's interesting. I wear a few hats. Some of them I pick up more often than others. A disabled veteran, served the country for 16 years and 4 years in the Marines, 12 in the Army. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm an app developer. I also am an author. I used to write under a pen name, but now I'm going to start republishing those books under my own name. And I like to call myself a little bit of a philanthropist, right? And definitely a lover of veterans.
Okay. Well, thank you for your service.
Thank you.
And as you guys know, I jump right into it, right? I'm not a pity patter of around the feet. I jump into the conversation very quickly. So again, thanks for joining. Daddy, let's talk about your role as a father. My first question, because I've had this conversation many times before, that most men, not all, but most men are not seeking fatherhood. They just kind of fall into it because they have a baby, right? They're not like some women who are aspiring to be a mother from a little girl, right? We grow up and our first thing is, oh, I can't wait to get married, can't wait to have kids, can't wait to be a mom. But men, on the other hand, tend to not really focus on being a father when they're young. They really focus on, I can't wait to just like be a man, have a lot of money, run the street. That's normally their focus, right? So can you tell us, when did you desire to be a father, or did it just happen to you?
I think initially it just happened. I was 19 years old. So I don't think that my maturity level was there to be a father.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of selfishness within me was still there. So I kind of, it just developed, or I fell into fatherhood. But fatherhood is one thing, being a dad is another. You know what I'm saying?
Talk about it.
Yeah. So anybody can father a child that's able to with their physical parts, or they have the ability to father a child. So that's fatherhood. But being a dad is a whole nother spectrum, just as well as being a mother is a whole nother spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
I just happened to fall into it. So it took me about 20 years to actually become a dad.
Tell us about that journey.
Again, like I said, I'm being transparent. It took me about 20 years. I think that what helped me out was becoming a father right? Not being a dad so much, but being a father at 19. I barely had my own life figured out. So trying to lead somebody else's life and all of that, that was a process. It's things you have to learn in life. I wasn't even finished learning about myself, so how could I legitimately learn about a child? But I did it, and I like to call my daughter. She's 27. She was my test pilot, right? So I learned so much about being a dad with her. But everything didn't gel. Along the way, you gain experience and you build it. But I don't think I nailed it home and became a solid dad figure until I was about 38, 39 years old. And that's just the truth.
So when you were, I guess, navigating the waters, right? How difficult was it to just like put yourself aside? And because I feel like in general, being a parent in general is like the most selfless thing you can do if you're going to do it right. Because you're going to put the child first for the most part of everything that you do in life, because their life matters. And it's like you're the one in control of it. You have to protect them, guide them, put them in places that is going to make them succeed and be successful. So how do you, like, when you were doing that process for you, like, when were you like, you know what? I got to stop being selfish? Or did you say, I need to figure me out first and let mom handle it, and then I'll just like join the train when I'm ready? You know what I mean? Like, because I think dads have a different perspective a lot. Like you guys, and I'm not saying this from a bashing standpoint, but typically the responsibility of a child lies on the mother unless the mother walks away, right? Unless that mother be like, Psh, I'm out. And so how did that happen for you? Like, how did you go, you know what, I got to stop worrying about me and really step in and actually run the race of daddyhood?
That happened around maybe my late 20s, early 30s. It wasn't an epiphany overnight. It was a thing of, hey, one important thing, I started taking being a dad kind of serious at that point, but I still didn't set aside my selfishness. I'm just being honest and transparent. I still wanted to have a certain life and focus on me, right? And that's where I think that people should evaluate when you're bringing lives into this world. Evaluate whether you're done doing you. Evaluate whether you're ready to take that next person's life over yours and make it your priority. And I wasn't in that place. I'm not even going to lie. I didn't get that until my late 20s, early 30s. And that's when I said, you know what? I have a daughter, and at that time you're talking, she's 10 or 11. And I started noticing that daughters watch their fathers in a different capacity, right? Young men will want to look at their fathers and duplicate what they see, right? And that's one thing in its own, because that young man is normally going to see what he took from his father and then develop his own personality. A daughter stands right there and looks you dead in your eyes, and she's looking at dad like, this is what I'm going to see. This is what I'm going to formulate the man I want to be with after my dad. And I didn't realize that until my late 20s, early 30s. And then I realized, hey, she's watching me, but not like my sons watch me. You know what I mean? My sons wanted to see how to operate as a man, right? Whereas I think my daughter was looking at me how a man should maneuver himself. You see what I mean? So if she ends up with a guy that's a certain way, not all the time, I'm not saying all the time, but if she ends up with a guy a certain way, it could be possibly because of the relationship that she had with me. And I started to take that serious. And I said, oh no, I got to fix this. I got to solidify this, because in maybe another 10 years or 12 years, my daughter may be walking down the aisle. And I would love for the man that she walked down the aisle not be what I was, but be better than me. But I know that he's, complete enough and wholeness enough to take care of my daughter, So that's when it kicked in for me.
Awesome. It's actually awesome that you said that, because when I first started out on the journey of like being a coach, I wrote a book about daddy issues for women. And in that, I talk about how we tend to find our fathers in men that we
Mm-hmm.
want to date. And a lot of times we do it not really from a conscious standpoint, it's more from a subconscious, because it's something that we have been conditioned through the growing up process of what we
Mm-hmm.
tolerate, what we enjoy, what we are used to, right? So, like, a lot of times we move from a comfort standpoint than we do from a necessity or what we need perspective, right? So, like you just
Mm-hmm.
mentioned, the daughter is looking up to you to see what type of man she should really be attracting, or what type of man she should engage with based upon the type of man you are in her life, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think a lot of times dads don't understand that concept. They don't understand how the
Facts.
effect that they have on their
Yeah, fact.
children, adulthood. When you walk away or not there, when you're there but not there. And when I mean that, is like they know who you are, they know how to get in touch with you, but you're not actively present in their lives, in their development and things of that nature. They tend to have an issue with attachment, right? Like, they find it difficult to attach to men, so they avoid them. They, are always. I love when men can, like, really have a big issue when women are very clingy,
Mm-hmm.
right? They have an issue with it. They're like, why you asking me where I'm going every time I walk out the door? But they don't realize that that stems from the woman having a father that every time he walked out the door, she didn't know if he was coming back. You understand what I'm saying? Like, it's
Yeah. Yeah.
all of that kind of does derive from that. So I think
Yeah.
it's very honorable for you to say that you didn't realize how you showed up could affect her in the long
Mm-hmm.
run. And when you realized that, you
Mm-hmm.
decided to change it.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So now I'm going to ask, did you have a conversation with her when you decided to make that change, or did you just show up differently?
That's an interesting question because there was several conversations made. One conversation I feel like I owed her because I hadn't been. I was never like not in the picture, but as you say, I'm around, I'm involved, but I'm not engaged. If that
Mm-hmm.
makes sense. I'm around, I'm involved, but I'm not engaged. I'm not really saying, "Hey, I'm going to make everything that I can make," or "Hey, mom went, so you had somebody to represent." When that's not what they, neither your son nor your daughter want to see that. They want to see both parents there, even if you're not together. They
Mm-hmm.
want to see both of them being represented because now they can say, "There goes my dad, there goes my mom,"
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of their peers and other children don't have that ability to say that too, and that's I didn't realize how important that was.
Mm-hmm.
So there was a conversation probably in my early 30s, but I think the real big conversation came when I was probably about, like I said, about 37. I was probably about 35 years old, and there came a real big conversation. She was 16,
Mm-hmm.
and she broke some things down to me. And one of the biggest lessons that she taught me was, I was in the military, so I was always gone a lot. But even when I was back in the States or back where I was, I was a dad, but I was dad at a distance.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, and a lot of men misunderstand this, that if we provide what our children desire, meaning toys and games and computers and phones,
Mm-hmm.
we feel that those material things validate us as fathers,
Mm-hmm.
right? We feel that they are the pacifiers for our absence. But what my daughter said, she said, "Hey, Dad, all of that stuff was cool. All the iPads was cool. All the phones were cool. The computers were cool. The video games were cool. But guess what? We wanted time. We wanted
Mm-hmm.
your time."
Mm-hmm.
They don't remember what video games I might have brought. They don't remember what clothes or shoes or whether I got them some Jordans or not, whether I got them this or that. What they do remember is that time we went fishing, Dad. You remember that time we went fishing? Remember the time when it was the first time I on our roller coaster and we went on the roller coaster and you were laughing at us? They
Yeah.
remember that. They couldn't tell you what color the shoes were. They couldn't tell
Right.
you what kind of computer I brought them. They couldn't tell you what their first phone was probably a Nokia or something, right? They don't
Mm-hmm.
remember. And neither do I sometimes. But I
Right.
do remember when they bring back to my memory, hey, you remember we went on our first trip and you remember we did this and you remember you laughed at us for that. That means so much to them. And so I realize that it's time and those experiences and those memories that really mean something. So when a lot of fathers, and I'll be able to tell you, in my early part of my career, I didn't have a lot of resources. I didn't have a lot of finances to play with. And I felt guilty because I'm like, man, I can't give my kids this and I can't give my kids that and I can't buy them this. So sometimes it makes you feel less than. But when you really dig down and they catch you down the line and they say, hey, we could care less about whether that you could have took us to McDonald's and got us a $2.50 Happy Meal. So it was about $2.50 back then. But
it may cost you $10 now.
Yeah. You know, a little tougher for the guys out here, but you know, all they care is that we just sat there and shared a thing of fries and just talked, or color in a coloring book with them. You see what I mean? That they don't care about the big stuff at the end of the day.
Right. I remember. So for me, my dad he was the I know who you are, know where you're located, not really physically there all the time, but I can call, type dad until I became an adult. But I remember, when we had special moments more than I remember him doing something for me. Right. And so I think a lot of times when we don't realize that time is what equals love to most and all people, like even when you talk about the different love languages that exist currently, a lot of people have quality time as one of their number one love language, simply because how can you say you love me and you don't spend time with me? Like, how can you, just how? Like, how can you, that's a little almost impossible. Right. I love you, but I never see you.
Yeah.
Like that alone just sounds crazy to me, you know?
Well, let me ask you this. If I can ask you a question.
Of course you can.
Do you remember what is the most fondest memory you have of your dad in something that y'all shared together, or a moment y'all shared together?
Wow. So I do have a few, even though there was not a whole lot of time, but my fondest memory as a child is my dad. He wrote a song for me when I was an infant. And it's a song that sings in my head all the time when I think of him. Right. And so whenever he would be nice to me or want to spend time with me or want to have daddy-daughter moments, he would sing it to me, and it was something super short and sweet. It didn't even have real verses, or it was just a chorus. It was just a hook, right? Yeah. And it made me feel special. And it made me feel special, honestly, because he didn't make it for nobody else. You know what I mean? And he technically has 3 biological children, 5 and 7 total kids when he has stepchildren or bonus children. And so, but nobody has a song but me. And I am his first biologically born daughter. I have a brother. He has a son. I have a brother who's not from my mom. And then I have my sister who is from my mother, who's younger than me. But I still am the one with the song. And so...
And you'll carry that memory
forever,
for the rest of your days, right? But yes. I bet you don't remember the first toy that he brought you. You
Never.
Don't remember the first doll, right? Because that particular thing and experience and memory embedded in your heart. And that's what I had to learn too. Like, creating memories with my kids was what they wanted. In order to create memories, you need time.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think a lot of times dads kind of forget that it's about the child and not about the mom a lot. Right. So I do know that there is a disconnect when it comes to some fathers who may desire to be a dad, but the mom may be in the way. The mom may be what I call a roadblock in actually navigating the fatherhood or daddyhood, as we were distinguishing between the two. Did you ever have those struggles?
Yes, with my first daughter, I had those struggles. But let me say this in defense of that. I inquired about, like I said, I became a dad at 19, and I inquired about why, you know, sometimes she wouldn't be available when I wanted to spend the time, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so sometimes our children see things totally different than how we
Mm-hmm.
see. And so all they know is, well, you didn't come around. Well, not all the time is the case that I didn't come around. Maybe there were things or roadblocks blocking, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not going to tell you that some men don't come around and they just don't care. But in
Right.
a lot of times in my earlier years, they prevented me from kind of getting to my daughter. And I asked them about it later on in life, when I had matured. And they said, well, we were just trying to protect her.
Mm.
When I go back and I think about that, I'm not going to say that it had no validity at all,
Mm-hmm.
right? Um, Protecting a child means more than just physical. In fact, I'll say protecting the child, the physical part really sometimes is a secondary aspect because you have to protect the child's mind. You
Mm-hmm.
see what I mean? And so there are things now I wouldn't dare let my kids be around, or people I wouldn't dare let them be around because of my maturity level. I don't want that even to feed in any part of their spirits.
Mm-hmm.
So when I was younger, I didn't like I said, I was figuring me out. I wasn't sure the people I was supposed to hang around, yet alone bring my children around someone who may not have been best for their spirit. You see what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? So when people say, the reason why we didn't always let you get, your daughter or your son is because of maybe the company I kept,
Mm-hmm.
maybe the spirit I had at the time. So sometimes I think that it's very important that we as parents, we do protect our children's mental
Mm-hmm.
aspect of it because even for myself, stuff that was happening to me or things I saw happening in my home at 10 showed back up at 28. So that's what I didn't want to do to my kids. So I'm glad in a sense that they did protect them and not always let them go with me because I wouldn't want to do anything that would pop up latter years in their adulthood and they still dealing with, well, my daddy let me see this or my daddy let me do that. I wouldn't want that. So I'm glad that they did.
That's a very good perspective. A lot of times we don't really think about it from that
Mhm.
perspective. Most of
Mhm.
the time, the roadblock is always because of the relational issues between the
Mhm.
two parents.
Mhm.
So to have that perspective, I mean, that's actually pretty awesome.
Yeah. I
It's
mean,
not.
look at some kids. I have a friend. His mom was a drug addict, right?
Mhm.
And even though he lived partially with his mom, partially with his grandmother, the grandmother wouldn't let him always go with his mom. And uh, the reality to it is, grandma was protecting him from something. And
Mhm.
then I think a lot of times, even when the father and the mother can't get along, I think sometimes for children to see that, that's unhealthy too. You see what I'm saying? So is it best, and I've always thought about this, is it best for my child to see me and mom battling back and forth,
Mhm.
never no physical for me, but I know people who saw physical in her. That's a mental strain right there as well for the child. You see
Mhm.
what I'm saying? So sometimes distancing ourselves is a good thing. I never had to do that. I always had grandmother issues with a grandmother, was kind of trying to protect me from getting my daughter. But yeah, so you got to look at the big picture sometimes. Sometimes, even though it doesn't seem fair, if you're just going to cause chaos and trauma for the kids, leave each other alone anyway. It's the way it is.
Hey, hope you're feeling the love in today's episode. We'll pick back up where we left off in a moment. First, we're excited to share that Tammy has a collection of self-love t-shirts, hoodies, mugs, and journals for you to express how much you love yourself to the world. From comfy hoodies to motivational mugs, there's something for everyone. While you're listening to today's show, feel free to browse the full collection at IamTammyNicole.com. Thank you, and without further ado, let's get back into today's show.
Okay. Can you talk about a time when you felt particularly proud of your children and how that moment strengthened your bond?
Yeah. Um, well, I got 5 kids, so we'll start with my oldest daughter. My oldest daughter, when she graduated college,
Mhm.
now I've been proud of her many times before, but
Yeah.
that day did something special. And the reason why I did something special is because when she looked into that camera, because this was during COVID time, when she looked at that camera and she was coming off stage and she looked at that camera, it was like she was looking at me and her mom saying, I did it. And the reason I say that, and I know you will, kids graduate college all the time. That's true. But my daughter it took her 7 years to get her degree. She went to school for 2 years, stopped. Went to school another year, stopped. So, and the whole time, me and her mom are like pushing her, saying, come on, do this. You're almost there. You're halfway across the finish line or whatever. And so when she did it, it was more of, here's the crazy part. She was so proud of herself that it made me more prouder than what she was. Because you
Mhm.
love to see your kids excel. You love to see your kids happy.
Absolutely.
You love to see them complete their goals. You know what I'm saying? Because they feel good about themselves. And because
Right.
she was so self-confident about herself, it made me feel good. I'm like, they're my baby right there. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
With my sons, each thing was different. My oldest son, he completed college as well, but him getting his job in IT. See
Mhm.
what I'm saying? That's what, because I saw that his his confidence as a man grew. Like, I can do this. I got this. College was a whole nother thing. I knew he was smart. We knew he was smart. He wasn't going to struggle with it. He did college almost in 3 years. So he was already equipped with certain things when it came to education, but sometimes the confidence, especially as an African American male, it can be rough.
Mhm.
So to see him go into his job and walk into his calling of what he believed he should do, that was big. And my
Yeah.
youngest son was the same thing. Now I got 2 younger daughters. They're not yet off into to college and doing what they want to do, but I'm just so proud of the accomplishments that they're making now, because these kids are way smarter than we are at our day and time. And I just am amazed at what they're going to do, because they are awesome, the way they think and
Mhm.
everything. Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. So, what are some key values and lessons you hope to give your kids through your relationship?
Well, one, and I think we lack with this modern concept, but always have a relationship with God. That's number one.
Okay.
Always have a relationship with God. Understand the higher power, the Almighty, whatever you want to put on them, but understand that God is with you. God is in control. Now, we can alter certain things in our lives, but God is always in control. Um, the second thing is that at the end of the day, I hope that they are proud of me, uh, and that I was an example of what redemption looks like, what passion looks like, what courage looks like, and perseverance. And the third thing I would say is always believe in you. You know what I'm saying? I would always want them to believe that, hey, my dad taught me to believe in me. You know what I'm saying? Um, at the end of the day, regardless to anything, as long as they believe in themselves and they stick and hold to what I taught them and their moms taught them, because I think that that'll get them through life. And I want them to always take them principles and pass them down to their children as well.
Awesome. 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 So, I do have a couple of more questions.
Mm-hmm.
Not too many, just a few more. How do you handle difficult conversations when you talk to them? Like, what's your
Well,
approach? How do you make sure that they feel like safe and secure within the conversation?
well, I must say, I've never been the disciplinarian of my children. I've caught I've caught feedback and slack from their mothers, and it's like, I don't make my kids my friend. I don't believe in that. Not until you're a certain age. Once you get a certain age, I don't even know if we'll be friends, but we'll definitely take on a different atmosphere and environment between our relationship.
Absolutely.
But for me, I'm the lecture dad. I've never had to hit my children. I didn't believe in putting hands on my children. I'm a big guy, so I didn't want to hurt them, especially my girls. And it hurts a father when you make your daughter cry. It's okay if your son cry. I know y'all gonna say I'm wrong for that, but it's okay if you make your son cry. But it's something about making your daughter cry that just takes it to another realm, and it hurts you. And any real man will tell you, it just hurts harder when your daughter's crying. So I'm a lecturer dad. I sit down and I talk to them, and they always knew that I was a safe place. And as I matured, I gave better advice. When I was younger, I might have gave some advice that make them scratch their head. I don't know if I should try that. But I've always been the lecture dad, and I've always been the dad that, hey, what do you think about this? They've always came to me, and it caused friction with the mothers because the mothers felt like, oh, well, they don't trust me to come to me with that. They don't, and no mother wants to lose her space, lose her position. But, yeah, I've always been that dad that you could come to and talk to about anything. And I think that because I'm a lecture dad, they have avoided talking to me about certain situations. Mm-hmm.
So when you say they have avoided talking to you about certain situations, do you feel like you would want to change that, or are you cool with it?
Let me say this. I like it the way it is. Right?
Gotcha.
Because, and I know that people are going to say, well, that's wrong. You can't look at it like that. I can sit down and talk to my sons about young ladies, about the kind of young lady they need in their life, or the kind of young lady they should want. When it comes to sitting down and talk to my daughters about a man that they need, they don't need no man. They got God and they got me. You don't need nobody. That's how I look at that.
That double standard. Okay.
You don't need nobody. You know what I'm saying? You got God, you got me.
But you can't be their man, and you know that.
Right.
But you don't want to have that conversation. I
don't want to have that conversation. In reality, not all, but most fathers are already going to think that no man is good enough for their daughter anyway. Now, I personally don't believe that, but I know that the man that I would desire them to end up with is a very, very rare find. I wouldn't even want them to be with nobody else like me. I would want them to be with someone better than me. And I think I've done okay. I think I came out all right. But I would want them to be with, it's a rarity. It's a rare man, a very rare man. And with the personalities of my daughters, I don't know if that man would fit.
Exist.
Well. I've got some strong daughters. You know what I mean? They're strong all by themselves. They're all Capricorns. Ain't that something?
Oh, that's interesing. That's a whole nother subject. I'm gonna hold that topic for another episode. Another episode. However, I have one final question. And that question is, what advice would you give to other fathers who want to build and maintain strong, loving bonds with their children?
It's going to be hard, but fathers got to be vulnerable. It doesn't matter the age or the gender of that child. You got to be vulnerable with your kids. You got to be vulnerable. And I know it's hard for men to be vulnerable in general, but I promise you, children have an extra sense, and they can tell when someone isn't being straight up with them. Be straight up with your kids. Be vulnerable. Tell the truth. Be honest with them. Like, hey, I can't sit up here and tell you, baby, that I got all the answers, but I tell you what, I'm going to pray to the man upstairs, and he give me the proper guidance. And hopefully I'm going to make the right decision for you, your mom, and whomever else is involved. You got to be vulnerable with them. You got to tell them the truth and let them know that you're not perfect and you're not always going to make the right decision, because that's life. Right. That's life. Just let them know that you're making the best decision from your heart and from your prayers that you made. And that's all you can do. You just got to be vulnerable with your kids, and that vulnerability looks different at different times in your life. Different times in your life. I was brought up that men should not cry. I'm not going to say men should walk around with tissues in their pockets, but if you have an emotion inside of yourself, you should release it and let it out. Whether that means you release it and let it out at certain times or whatever it takes, but be vulnerable with your children. Let them know, hey, dad might cry sometimes. You might not see me cry, but I cry sometimes. And I want you to know it's okay to cry. Just like you see me smile sometimes. Dad smiles sometimes. I smile a lot. But just be transparent and vulnerable with your children so that they'll be transparent and vulnerable with you. You'll be surprised when they feel like they're in a safe place, what they'll express to you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, there you have it, folks. That's what it's like to be a dad. That's what it's like to understand the difference between fatherhood and daddyhood. Bond with your children. Remember to teach them to love themselves, because self-love is super, super important. Because over here, we love ourselves so much that the love from others is a bonus. Thanks for joining us, and see you next week. Have a good day.
That's a wrap on another episode of Loving Me Before I Love You. If you enjoyed today's episode, please take a second to show your support by subscribing and leaving a positive rating and review on Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, iHeartRadio, and Spotify. Stay connected with Tammy. Make sure you're following her on Instagram and TikTok at Coach Tammy Nicole. If you like to work with Tammy or have any questions you'd like her to answer, please head over to www.IamTammyNicole.com. Until next time, always remember to love yourself so much that the love from others is a bonus.